Hi, welcome back to Mr. Slover's Math. Today we are going to focus on the Pythagorean theorem. So you're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find a side length. So we got to warm up to get us ready for Pythagorean theorem. So solve for x in each of the following. So we're going to take the square root of x squared because there's always an inverse to every operation that we do. Just like addition, the inverse would be subtraction, multiplication would be division. The inverse of squaring would be square rooting. So when we square root both sides, we do get 12. Now, yes, you technically do get a positive and a negative because 12 times 12 is 144, and negative 12 times negative 12 is also 144. However, we're going to focus just on the positives because we are dealing with side lengths of a triangle. You can't have a negative side length of a triangle, so that's why I've only listed the positives. But realize that, yes, there are technically two answers, but for purposes of what we're focusing on today, which is side lengths of a triangle, we're going to list one of them. So for letters C and D, these both look different. Okay? And I have a note here that says get x squared by itself first and then square root it. So I have x squared plus 4 equals 85. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides and then take the square root. Letter D, this is a positive 36. If there's no sign in front of it, it's assumed that it's a positive. So I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides and then take the square root. Now your calculator will do one of two things. It will spit out 6 root 3, which is a simplified radical, which we have not talked about in class, which is okay. Or it will spit out a decimal, in which case you'll round to the nearest tenth. It doesn't matter which one you give me. They're both the same in terms of do you understand the content. And then for number 2 on the warm-up, just asking you to evaluate, to simplify this. 4 squared means I'm timesing it by itself. So 4 times 4 is 16. 13 squared is 13 times 13. And 1 squared is 1 times 1. So we want to be clear that when you square something, it means you multiply by itself. This is not saying 13 times 2 or 4 times 2 or 1 time. That is not what it's saying. It's saying that number times itself. And it has to be very clear on that. So that's our warm-up, getting us ready for what we're going to do today. Today, we're focusing on a right triangle. So in a right triangle, the side opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, and the other two sides are the legs. So let's backtrack. You should know what a triangle is. It's got 3 sides. A right triangle means you are looking for the symbol that is a right angle, right? So this is a right angle mark. If you don't know that, now you do. If it's a right triangle, most of the time it has that it has that symbol. Sometimes it may not have the symbol. Sometimes it may have a number that says 90. Or you may be required to figure out that that missing angle is 90. Okay? But most of the time there's going to be a right angle mark. This is saying that the hypotenuse, or the side opposite or across from the right angle, is the hypotenuse. The other two are the legs. So one way to think about this is the legs are the 2 sides that are attached to the right angle. The hypotenuse is not. I highlighted the hypotenuse. It's on the other side of the triangle. The hypotenuse will always be the largest of the 3 numbers, 100% of the time. It doesn't matter what numbers I give you. It will always be the largest length. I don't even have to give you numbers. I could just draw this right triangle, and right away, if I know this is a right triangle, I know without any numbers at all that this highlighted piece is the longest length. I know that right away. So the first example is I'm having you label the legs, A and B, and the hypotenuse, C. So really, you just need to find the hypotenuse. So here's my right angle. Go across or go opposite my right angle, and that's my hypotenuse. The other 2, it doesn't matter. Those are my legs. Okay? So I could have an A here or a B here. Or I could have a B here and an A here. The A and the B, it doesn't matter which one is labeled, provided that the C is labeled correctly. So here's my right angle, go opposite. That's my right angle. These two are going to be my legs. Here's my right angle, go opposite. That's my hypotenuse. The other two are my legs. You need to be able to identify your legs and your hypotenuse in order to use the right or the correct formula. So the Pythagorean theorem, that's what's in this box. In a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the measures of the legs equals the square of the measure of the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So what I said is right here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You just practiced A and B are legs and C is your hypotenuse. That's what this is saying right here. In other words, leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So some of you will benefit from using this. By the way, this is the formula that they give you on standardized tests. Some of you, this will make more sense. This is not given to you on standardized tests. That's just a Mr. Slover thing to help you. So all that matters is that the C is the hypotenuse. The A and the B, once again, are interchangeable. I want to make you aware that this only works for right triangles. If it's not a right triangle, got to do something else. And in this class, I don't think we're ever going to see anything but right triangles in this unit. So just throwing that out there. So example 2, label the legs and the hypotenuse for each problem. Then use the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing length. Label first. So how to solve. Here's my steps for success. Label first. Right? A, B, and C. The only one that really matters is the C. The A and the B are interchangeable. Set up an equation. So I labeled A, B, and C. A is 6, B is 8, C is unknown. So I'm choosing to call that X. Square the numbers. 6 squared, 36. 8 squared, 64. Add or subtract your numbers. Now, I even went one step further and said you are adding your numbers if I give you both legs. You are subtracting the numbers if I give you the hypotenuse. And then the last step is to take the square root. So since I gave you 2 legs, I added them together, and then I took the square root. I got x is 10. So the missing side length for letter A is 10. The lengths of my triangle are 6, 8, and 10. Letter B, same concept. I label A, B, and C. The important one is the C, which is the hypotenuse, which is across or opposite your right angle. A and B are interchangeable. So I follow these steps for success. I'm going to get my answer. So A and B are very similar. In example 3, both of these, letter A is a little bit different. Right? Still the same setup, still the same steps for success. I label A, B, and C. C is opposite your right angle. C is your hypotenuse. Fill in my information in the equation. A, in this case, is unknown. B is 5. C is 16. So the next step for success was to square everything. 5 squared is 25. 16 squared is 256. On this case, I need to subtract because my steps for success said if I gave you the hypotenuse, you had to subtract your numbers. So 256 minus 25 gives me 231. From there, I take the square root. Root 231 is not rationalized or anything, or maybe your calculator spit out 15.2. There's your answer. Letter B is similar to the previous ones that we did in example 1. And then the last example, what if I don't draw the triangle for you? Can we still use the Pythagorean theorem? The answer is yes. Pythagorean theorem is just a leg squared plus a leg squared equals a hypotenuse squared, or A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So if I tell you A and B, what letter am I missing? You're missing the C. So I just plug in what I know. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Square your numbers. They're both legs, so I add them together. then take the square root. Letter B, I gave you a leg and a hypotenuse. Plug in your leg, plug in your hypotenuse, square your numbers. Because I gave you the hypotenuse, I'm going to subtract my numbers, and then I take the square root. Same thing for letter C and D. So today we are focusing on the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A and B are your legs, C is your hypotenuse, C is your longest length, C is across or opposite your right angle. If you have questions, make sure you let me know. Otherwise, thanks for stopping in. Till next time.